Welcome everyone to another episode of The Asylum with Harley and Joker. I am Queen Harley, as always joined by King Joker himself, who's on mute, so I will do the talking. Tonight's episode is...
Had a previous podcast playing in my headset. Oh, what up, folks? King Joker back as always, looking debonair and letting his big old King Joker dick hit the ground.
Oh, wow. Okay, so tonight's episode is when parents discover their children are serial killers. So I've got a video for us tonight because you guys know it seems like you go back and watch our clips where we're reacting to these videos more than you do all our other episodes that we've done. So this is what we're going to do. It's interviews of, well, besides the brackets, but it's interviews with serial killers' parents. So there we go.
And we don't mean serial killers like they're eating a bowl of tricks, motherfuckers.
To tapes of her son's confession to his crimes, she famously asked the journalist who played them for her. After Ted Bundy's mother listened to tapes of her son's confession to his crimes, she famously asked the journalist who played them for her, "Who's for apple pie and ice cream?" In court, she went on to say,
"My Christian upbringing tells me that to take another's life under any circumstances is wrong. And I don't believe the state of Florida is above the laws of God."
Similarly, Mackenzie Shirilla's mother refused to believe.
Okay, she said that, well, my thing on that, her son took the lives of others. So how does that make him any different?
She's not saying that he does. She's just saying that the state of Florida isn't above God. So that they should let him rot in prison.
Who wants apple pies? Who wants apple pie in the interview?
Well, that's just a good woman.
Believe her daughter was a murderer, stating,
"She's not a murderer."
In contrast, Adam Lanza's father took a very different stance, stating he believed his son deserved to be hanged. In this video, we will break down the reactions of parents discovering their child is a serial killer. Mackenzie Shirilla's parent. Mackenzie Shirilla was convicted of intentionally crashing her car into a brick wall at high speed in July 2022, resulting in the deaths of her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend, Davian Flanagan.
Before
any investigations, her parents' reactions were caught on body cam as it was revealed that she had been in an accident.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Progress in Alameda, car into a building. Two are deceased in the vehicle. Daughter's driving.
Later, investigations revealed that Shirilla accelerated.
That's not how you say it, you fucking dick.
Indicating the whole accident had been intentional. Just a day before the accident, CCTV
captured
her patrolling the area, and she had made numerous threats to her current boyfriend and exes, with evidence mounting officers' move to arrest her. When her parents heard, they decided to cause a scene.
All you guys did this on the weekend is just, look, all you do is go, hey, there's a warrant for, we would have brought a rig down here with no problem. Unbelievable.
So the warrant was issued today. So
we even made a phone call.
In 2023, she was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years.
This is the type of evidence you can never unsee.
Mackenzie Shirilla broke down in tears.
Cutie. She's going to be some woman in prison, bitch.
Natalie and John Shirilla sitting supportively behind her.
"She's not a murderer."
Mackenzie's mother, Natalie, voiced her disagreement in court. Mackenzie's mother was reasonable in her response.
She sped up into that building
because this was a tragic accident that she does not remember.
So also was the next parent, despite how horrifying their son's crime was. Brian Cohey's parent. Brian Cohey's crime stands as one of the most horrifying acts of violence in recent
looks like a mouth breather.
In February 2021, Cohey, then 21 years old, murdered 69-year-old Warren Barnes, a homeless man who was asleep near Crosby Avenue. The brutality of the crime was overwhelming. Cohey not only killed Barnes, but decapitated, dismembered, and mutilated his body. In a gruesome and inexplicable act,
that's some
Cohey
Ted
took
Bundy
some
shit.
of Barnes's body parts, including his head and hands, back to his home. The horror of this crime
took the
came to
head
light
in
when
his hands
Kobe's mother,
to his
Terry,
house.
discovered
Why? Why
Barnes's
would you want to
severed
do
head
that?
and hands rotting
Sex
in her
toys?
son's
I don't know.
closet. Shocked and horrified by the grisly discovery, she immediately contacted the authorities.
I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Her actions led to Brian's arrest, and dashcam footage from a business owner who had reported Barnes's disappearance earlier provided additional evidence in the investigation. The case took an emotional toll as Terry Cohey painfully recounted the moment she found the remains in her son's closet.
I don't know. How would you react finding that in your
Judge
child's
Richard
closet?
Gurley, who presided over the trial, called it one of the most horrific cases he
Part
had
of me
seen
would
in
wanna
his
hide it.
37 years in the criminal justice system. While
Like dig a
Cohey's
hole
defense
and bury
argued
it
that he
in the
suffered
woods?
from mental
Yeah.
health issues and had a distorted view of reality, the
But
court
part of me would be
ultimately
like,
determined
take this
that he had
motherfucker out of
long
my
been
house.
contemplating murder. Cohey confessed that he had
As a
specifically
parent,
targeted
it'd be
homeless
hard to
individuals,
decide
believing
what
that no
would be
one would
right
miss
to
them.
do.
Despite his plea of
Nah,
not guilty
I'd be
by
scared I'd
reason
be
of
next, so I'd
insanity,
be like,
the
take my
court
house. I
showed
don't
no
want
leniency.
be
Brian
fearful while
Cohey
I'm
was
sleeping.
sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would remain behind bars for the rest of his life. Upon leaving the courtroom, Brian's mother expressed her family's deep and sincere sympathies to the victim's family.
Deep and sincere sympathies to the community and the family of Mr. Barnes.
Apologies like these are what you would expect from a serial killer's mother. The next murderer's crime was so severe that he could not admit to it in front of his mother, Gavin Ramsey's parent. On April 6,
Gordon Ramsay's son?
2018, Ramsey targeted Margaret Douglas, a 98-year-old woman who lived alone in her home. Ramsey had been scoping out vulnerable individuals in the neighborhood, and Douglas, being elderly and isolated, became his chosen victim. Ramsey, driven by a dark obsession with
These
violence,
kids all
entered her
look like
home
serial
in the early
killers.
hours
I don't
of
know
the
what the
morning
hell
while
else you want
she
me to
slept.
say. They all look
Once
like serial
inside,
killers.
he strangled Margaret
really
Douglas to
do.
death. After killing her, Ramsey proceeded to sexually assault her post-mortem. He then took
Really?
disturbing steps to stage the body,
Really?
posing it in ways that
He
suggested
cracked open a cold
a
one.
twisted form of satisfaction.
He cracked open a
from what
cold
he had
one, a
done.
cold
When the
whiskey one.
police called him in for an interrogation, he appeared with
Little
his
old
mother,
lady, are
but
you
even though he
serious?
knew the crimes he had committed were so gruesome,
Hello,
he could not admit
viewers
them in her
from
presence.
X. You guys can comment, say hello.
What's that? You two actually, so I didn't talk to her. Yeah.
He admits to investigators that all the trouble he makes is for the risk and thrill factor, because he cannot feel anything. So, in order for him to feel anything, things like these are his thrills.
And all I've ever done is take risks because that's the only thing that makes me. That's your drug. Adrenaline.
During the investigation, police found journal entries and notebooks belonging to Ramsey, detailing his fantasies of murder and necrophilia. He also wrote about his interest in serial killers. Ramsey was charged as an adult and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While this guy could not admit to his crimes in front of his mother, our
You
next
took the
serial
risk and
killer
now
would
you're
only
fucking paying
confess
the
to theirs.
time.
Todd Colehep's parent. Colehep's crimes first came to light in November 2016, when Kayla Brown, a woman who had been missing for 2 months, was discovered chained inside a shipping container on Colehep's 95-acre property in Woodruff, South
Jesus, that's a
Carolina.
large property.
Police had traced her phone to the area and, upon searching the property, found her in captivity. Brown revealed that she and her boyfriend, Charlie Carver, had been lured to Colehep's land under the guise of a job offer. When they arrived, Colehep shot and killed Carver in front of her and then kept her prisoner. After his arrest, Colehep made a deal with investigators in which he agreed to confess to these murders in exchange for several personal requests. He wanted to speak to his mother, give her a photograph, and transfer money into a college fund for the child of a friend. During his conversation with his mother, he confessed to the murders and the kidnapping of Kayla Brown. His confession to the Chesney shootings revealed grisly details that had never been made public, leaving no doubt about his involvement. Colehep's interaction with his mother following his arrest revealed his chilling indifference to the scale of his crimes. When she asked him if there were more victims beyond those already known, his cryptic response was, "You do not have enough fingers." Investigators took this statement seriously and began looking into potential victims in other parts of the country, especially in Arizona, where Colehep claimed to have shot another victim. His mother would later talk about how Todd had grown up with a lot of anger, and there was nothing she could do to help it.
I had to get rid of the anger. and nothing I did seemed to help.
In a recent and deeply tragic school shooting, authorities were alerted to warning signs involving a suspect named Colt Gray. Even the FBI had traced evidence leading back to him, but his father refused to believe the allegations. This denial contributed to one of the most chilling and blood-curdling cases in recent history. Apalachee school shooter's parent. In September 2024, a devastating school shooting at Apalachee High School in Barrow County, Georgia, claimed the lives of 2 students and 2 teachers. The shooter, 14-year-old Colt Gray, was charged with their murders, while his father, Colin Gray, faced second-degree murder charges for providing him with the AR-15-style rifle used in the attack.
Why would you give your
Colt had
child
struggled
an
with bullying
AR-15
at school and his
rifle?
parents' separation. His father described a boy who was often
Because you're a
ridiculed
fucking
and had
retard,
few
that's why.
friends, but downplayed his son's emotional state. Colt's mother, sensing something was wrong, made a desperate call to the school just 30 minutes before the shooting, warning them of an extreme emergency involving her son. Tragically, her
So she
warning came
calls
too
the
late to prevent the
school
violence.
and
A year
warns
before
them
the
he's
attack,
gonna
Colt
come
had been
shoot.
investigated for an online threat, but was cleared due to lack of evidence.
Said something about shooting up a school. Did you say something about school shooting? Never, I just told him, I don't know what. Maybe they misheard somebody else.
Despite signs of emotional turmoil, such as bullying and his parents' eviction, neither parent fully grasped how deeply Colt was struggling.
All the school shootings, things that happen.
Yeah,
all
scary.
Are you getting picked on at school? He is. He's getting picked on at school, and is everything okay?
His father often emphasized outdoor activities like hunting, believing it was a way to bond, but unwittingly gave his son access to a deadly weapon.
We do a lot of shooting. We do a lot of deer hunting. He shot his first deer this year.
Our next case involves another mad kid with a gun, Dylan Roof's parent. Dylan Roof committed a horrific hate crime on June 17, 2015, when he walked into the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The church, one of the oldest black congregations in the United States, was hosting a Bible study session that evening. Roof, a 21-year-old white supremacist, sat with the group for nearly an hour before pulling out a Glock 45 caliber handgun and opening fire on the unsuspecting worshippers. He killed 9 people, all of them African American, including the church's pastor, Reverend Clementa Pinckney. Dylan Roof's parents were devastated by their son's arrest. His mother, overwhelmed with shock, suffered a heart attack in court upon hearing prosecutors label him a cold and calculated killer. Both parents struggled to reconcile the image of their son with the horror of his actions. Roof had written apologetic suicide notes to each of them,
let your son go to be a white supremacist and you're surprised when he kills a church full of black people. Yeah, you're a parent of the year right there.
Very much. I wish I was in your arms. To his father, Roof expressed guilt, acknowledging his father's efforts to be a good parent. His father had even promised to buy him a gun for his birthday, unaware of the deadly plans Roof harbored. The arrest left Roof's parents grappling with shock, disbelief, and the heavy burden of their son's atrocities. While in this case, the crime was very clear and hard to dispute even by his parents, our next case shows a father's defiance, not willing to believe his son was a cold-blooded killer. Luca Magnotta's parent.
I mean, I get that.
Luca Magnotta was accused of committing a series of horrific crimes, the most infamous being the brutal murder of Chinese international student Lin Jun in May 2012. Magnotta lured Lin to his apartment in Montreal, where he killed him in a particularly gruesome manner. He stabbed Lin to death, dismembered his body, and performed acts of necrophilia. After the murder, Magnotta filmed the dismemberment and posted the video online, which showed disturbing details of the crime. In addition to the murder and dismemberment, Magnotta was also accused of mailing body parts, Lin's hands and feet, to various institutions across Canada, including political offices and schools. During the trial, Luca Magnotta's father provided deeply personal testimony about his relationship with his son and his own troubled history during the trial. A 50-year-old man with a psychiatric diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia and manic depression, Magnotta's father revealed how mental illness ran through the family. He recounted how his own voices, especially that of his stepfather, once urged him to kill himself, and he sympathized with his son's struggles. He testified that he had tried to help Magnotta by referring him to his own psychiatrist when he was 20 years old. Concerned that his son might also be hearing voices, Magnotta had even been hospitalized at one point, though his father couldn't recall the exact details. When asked if he believed his son committed murder, his father responded, "No, I know he didn't do it," holding on to a conviction that mental illness,
But there was a video video of him
criminal
doing
intent
it.
was at play. Despite the allegations and
Parents
the horrific
want to stay
nature of
blind
Magnot's
until they're
crime,
fucking
his father
forced to
spoke
see
of
it.
visiting him in prison and maintained contact until visits were no longer permitted. A parent's love is often so profound and unconditional that even the greatest evil can't break it. Just as Luca Magnotta's father grappled with his son's actions, Ted Bundy's mother refused to accept her son as a serial killer, holding on to her love for him until she heard it from his mouth. Ted Bundy's parent.
My Christian upbringing tells me that to take another's life under any circumstances is wrong. And I don't believe the state of Florida is above the laws of God.
The moment
Stay at 4
Louise
a.m. above the
Bundy,
laws of
Ted
apostle, for
Bundy's
fuck's
mother,
sake.
heard the tapes of her son's chilling confessions during a visit from journalist Stephen Michaud remains one of the most bizarre and telling reactions in the saga of her son's notorious crimes. Michaud, along with his colleague Hugh Ainsworth, had spent months interviewing Ted Bundy, eventually tricking him into revealing key details of his murders. Before releasing the tapes publicly, they felt obligated to share them with Ted's parents.
There's nothing in his background that can tell us what triggered all of this. In fact, up until Saturday, I didn't believe any of it.
Louise had stood by her son for
Wasn't
years,
Ted
convinced
Bundy's
of his
father
innocence,
beating
even
on
in the
him?
face of overwhelming evidence.
I mean,
She held
all
on
the
to
old school
belief
serial
that
killers
her
had their
son
parents
was
beating on them.
incapable of committing the heinous acts attributed to him. Michaud described how he played the tapes for Louise and her husband in their home, sharing Bundy's unsettling confessions. As Louise listened to the recordings, she made strange, almost squeaking sounds, an eerie reaction. But the most shocking moment came after the tapes were played. Louise suddenly stood up, clapped her hands, and cheerfully asked, "Who's for apple pie and ice cream?" Even after hearing Ted's own voice describe his involvement in the murders, Louise continued to insist on his innocence up until the moment of his execution. Her reaction reflected the deep denial she harbored, unwilling or unable to accept the monster her son had become. Looking into Ted Bundy's background, you could tell that he came from a content-working family. So after his crimes, people struggled to believe he could do such a thing. The same can be said of Elliot Rodgers' father, who worked on the set of Hunger Games.
Oh, Daddy
Was
Bundy.
wealthy. Elliot Rodgers' parent.
I wake up and I think of those young men and young women that have died.
Elliot Rodgers' parents, Peter Rodger and Chin Rodger, faced unimaginable grief and devastation after their son's horrific killing spree near the University of California, Santa Barbara in May 2014. In the aftermath of the tragedy, they released a heartfelt written statement to ABC News expressing the depth of their sorrow and the pain they felt for the victims and their families. Their statement captured the profound despair of knowing their son's actions had caused such an unspeakable tragedy, describing their experience as hell on earth. Despite their consistent concern for Elliot, his parents had not anticipated the scale of his eventual violence. Elliot, who had long struggled with mental health issues, had been in therapy for much of his life. He had been isolated, withdrawn, and prone to anger, leading his parents to seek professional help for him from a young age. His father, a director who worked on films like The Hunger Games, and his mother had tried desperately to help Elliot cope with his inability to make friends and his growing frustrations. On the day of the attack, Chin Rodger discovered her son's manifesto, a 137-page document titled My Twisted World, and watched part of his disturbing YouTube video, Retribution. Knowing something was terribly wrong, she immediately contacted Peter, and together they rushed to Santa Barbara. Horrified, they listened to radio reports about the massacre that would claim the lives of 6 victims and leave 14 others injured. Though Elliot's parents had feared he might take his own life due to his deep-seated loneliness and depression, they never imagined he would commit such an atrocity. The reaction by Peter Lanza Adams' father was also unbelievable. Adam Lanza's parent. In a rare and raw interview with The New Yorker in 2014, Peter Lanza openly shared his pain, expressing a sentiment that is both shocking and heartbreaking. He wished his son Adam had never been born. Peter described how neither he nor his ex-wife, Nancy Lanza, ever suspected that Adam was capable of such violence.
Dude looks like a serial killer. Who the fuck are
who
you
was a
kidding?
gun enthusiast, kept several firearms in the house, and one of these, the Bushmaster semi-automatic rifle.
He looks like the serial killer version of
in the house.
While they always considered Adam
He looks like the
peculiar
serial killer
and
version of
isolated,
Kevin
they
Nealon.
never believed he was dangerous. Peter had even taught Adam to drive, recalling how careful and rule-abiding he was. Yet, this rule-following nature masked the darkness that eventually manifested in unimaginable violence. He confessed that while Adam had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, this diagnosis may have
That's not an
obscured deeper,
excuse for
more
that,
troubling
'cause
issues
my
like
kids have
potential
Asperger's.
schizophrenia. He wishes he had looked beyond the diagnosis
Are they
and
delicious?
sought more answers from the many psychiatrists and psychologists Adam had had seen, none of whom had detected any signs
Oh,
of
that South Park
violence.
episode makes me
Peter
laugh my ass
laments
off to this
that
day.
anything he might have done differently could have changed the outcome, which he described as the worst and most
I got
evil
an
outcome
ass.
imaginable. Peter also opened up about his ex-wife Nancy, whom Adam shot and killed before heading to the school. Despite the tragedy, Peter does not blame Nancy for what happened. He acknowledged that she had tried even harder than he had to help Adam, though she may have focused too much on giving him good days rather than addressing the larger issues in his life. After each of these crimes, we are often met with sober parents who would not believe their son's crime, but Peter Sutcliffe's father believes his son deserves to be hanged. Peter Sutcliffe's parent. John recounted the devastating moment he learned that his son was the Yorkshire Ripper. It was during a tea break at work when the news broke. The shock and disbelief were overwhelming, and he asked his manager for permission to go home. The discovery forever changed his life, filling him with shame, hurt, and guilt as he grappled with the reality of his son's monstrous actions. He then spoke candidly about the complex emotions he has faced since learning that his son was responsible for the brutal murders of 13 women and the attempted murders of 7 others. In a television documentary titled Killer in the Family, John revealed that he no longer visits his son, who is incarcerated for life at Broadmoor, a high-security psychiatric hospital. However, he still speaks with Peter on the phone every fortnight, maintaining a fragile connection through small talk. John's emotions are a mixture of love, guilt, and profound regret. He openly admitted in the
Every 2 weeks.
documentary that his son should have hanged, expressing a harsh truth that many fathers would struggle to confront. Yet, despite the horrific nature of his son's crimes, John emphasized that he continues to love Peter, not for what he did, but for who he is as his son. He described Peter as introverted and noted that he is the only one of his 6 children who keeps in regular contact with him. Our next serial killer's crime was so atrocious it almost felt
Oh, I
unreal.
would just own a
Chase's
fucker.
parent. Richard Chase, infamously known as the Vampire of Sacramento, committed a series of horrifying murders in California during the late 1970s. His crimes shocked the nation due to their gruesome nature and Chase's disturbed state of mind, which involved cannibalism, blood consumption, and necrophilia. His terrifying spree of violence was rooted in deep mental illness, but the extreme brutality of his actions made him one of the most notorious serial
He
killers
needed Dean
in
Sam
American
Winchester to
history.
cut his head off.
Police were able to link Chase to the murders through fingerprints and ballistics evidence. Additionally, the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit created a profile that described Chase's mental instability and his escalating need for blood, which helped narrow down the suspects. He was arrested shortly after, on January 27, 1978, just days after his final killings. During his trial, Chase pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense argued that his severe mental illness drove him to commit the
I'd say
murders,
that
but
was
the jury
insane.
rejected this plea, citing the
blood
extreme
like
planning
that
and
and
methodical nature of his crimes.
necrophilia.
In 1979, Richard Chase was convicted of 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death. However, Chase would never face execution. On December 26, 1980, he was found dead in his prison cell from an overdose of antidepressant medication that he had stockpiled over time. His death was ruled a suicide. Our next serial killer's crime was so vile, all his father could do in an interview was break down and cry. Jeffrey Dahmer's parent. Lionel
Oh, yeah.
Dahmer, Jeffrey's father, was a research chemist and author. He has been vocal about the pain, guilt, and confusion he felt in the aftermath of his son's crimes. Lionel's
I'd
reflections
probably
on
be
Jeffrey's
confused
upbringing
too,
reveal
but
a father who struggled to understand his son's
Jeffrey
behavioral
Dahmer shows
changes
signs
and
of
increasing
being
isolation.
unstable
A terrible smell, so I went underneath and cleaned it out.
a long
The smell
time
of the
before
skunk,
he did all that.
and cleaned out whatever else was under cans and bones and collected them all. And Jeff did seem to exhibit an interest in the way they clanked as he picked them up and put them back into a metal pail.
In his memoir, A Father's Story, published in 1994, Lionel shared his grief and examined whether there were signs he should have noticed that could have indicated Jeffrey's violent tendencies. Lionel admitted
How
to
did he
having been
not notice
emotionally
the
distant
signs?
at times
The
during Jeffrey's
roadkill?
childhood and expressed guilt over whether he
Although
had contributed
he
to
did
his son's
experience
problems.
signs. He saw
described
the shed
Jeffrey
full
as
of
a
fucking
relatively
bones and
quiet
roadkill
withdrawn
parts.
child, but
Exactly.
never
How did
suspected
he
that he
not
had become
see
a
the
murderer.
signs?
Lionel has also questioned whether there was something
I
genetic or
saw
inherent
a
to Jeffrey's
sign.
psychology
It
that led
opened
to his
up my
violent
eyes.
behavior,
I saw a
especially as Jeffrey
sign.
showed signs
Well,
of
it did
fascination
open up
with dead
his
animals
eyes
from a
because
young
he didn't
age.
see the
However,
signs.
Lionel has maintained that
Cartman singing
despite
Ace of
any
Base Street,
missed
folks.
signs or the
I mean,
environment in which Jeffrey grew up,
Didn't
was
he,
ultimately
like
shocked
in the
by the
show,
extent
didn't
of his
he
son's
take
crimes and
his
never
son
imagined
out
that Jeffrey was capable of such horror.
pick
But
up
in the end, he
roadkill?
forgave him.
And so if God
Yeah,
can
but
forgive,
he
which
also
is
went to the
demonstrated
shed
in
and
the
broke
scripture,
all the
that
fucking
God can
jars full of
certainly
shit.
forgive. St. Paul.
I mean, he found the
The
stuff.
teaching is, of course, that anyone can be forgiven.
Didn't
While
want to
Jeff's
see it.
parent forgave him, Ed Kemper's mother did not get the chance to do the same. Ed Kemper's parent.
It was springtime. It was April. And for 2 months, I hadn't killed. I said, it's not going to happen to any more girls. It's got to stay between me and my mother.
Edmund Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer, had a deeply dysfunctional relationship with his parents, particularly his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, which played a significant role in shaping his violent behavior. His troubled upbringing, marked by emotional abuse and isolation, contributed to the development of the deep-seated rage that would later manifest in his gruesome murders. Clarnell Strandberg was the dominant figure in Kemper's childhood and young adulthood, and their relationship was toxic and tumultuous. Clarnell was known to be emotionally abusive toward Ed from a young age, constantly belittling and humiliating him. She would criticize him for his appearance, intelligence, and behavior, often calling him stupid and worthless. Kemper later claimed that his mother never showed him any affection, and this lack of maternal warmth deeply affected him. Clarnell also believed that Ed was a danger to women, and as a result, forced him to sleep in the basement, away from his two sisters. Clarnell Strandberg, Ed Kemper's mother, did not have a reaction to her son's killings in the same way that the parents of other serial killers might have, because she was herself one of his victims. In a grim culmination of their toxic and abusive relationship, Ed Kemper killed Clarnell in April 1973, making her his final murder victim. Just the way Ed Kemper grew up in an abusive home, so also did the next person on our list, Patrick Mackay's parent. Patrick Mackay, one of Britain's most notorious serial killers, had a difficult and abusive upbringing, which contributed to his troubled mental state and eventual descent into violent crime. His relationship with his parents, particularly his father, Harold Mackay, played a significant role in shaping the young Patrick, who would later go on to commit a series of murders in the 1970s. Mackay's childhood was marked by violence, neglect, and emotional trauma, all of which influenced his development into a serial killer. Harold Mackay was a violent alcoholic who created a toxic and abusive home environment for Patrick and his siblings. He was known for his explosive temper, frequently lashing out at his children and wife. Patrick, being particularly sensitive and vulnerable as a child, bore the brunt of this abuse. Harold would often beat Patrick, verbally degrade him, and show him no affection or support. The instability of his father's behavior left a deep emotional scar on Patrick. When Patrick was just 10 years old, Harold died of a heart attack, which had a profound effect on Patrick. His father's death left him feeling abandoned and enraged. Though Harold had been abusive, Patrick still idolized him in a twisted way and struggled with complex feelings of grief and resentment. The loss of his father at such a formative age contributed to the psychological turmoil that would later define Patrick's life. After his father's death, Patrick's behavior became more erratic and disturbed. He began engaging in petty crimes, acts of violence, and cruelty toward animals. As Patrick grew older, his mental health issues escalated. He developed a fascination with violence and murder, often fantasizing about committing horrific acts. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but despite these warnings, he was released from psychiatric care as a young adult. His violent tendencies soon became deadly. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting...
Okay.
The kids aren't all right, folks. The kids aren't all right.
I mean, me as a parent, I probably wouldn't want to admit it, but
I would.
I'd turn my child in faster than anything if I found out they did something like that.
I mean, if I think I can bury a head, I'm going to bury a head. But, I mean, other than that, yeah, those kids are going to prison.
I mean, who's to say you wouldn't be next?
They could try. They could try. I promise nothing, but they could try.
Okay, guys. Well, that does it for this episode of The Asylum with Harley and Joker. Tune in next week. We have more interesting stuff. And we also have, coming up, 1952 bracket on the 19th. So tune in for that.
Billboard 1952, that is, folks. Top 30 songs off Billboard 1952. We're going way, way back and listening to some old days.
Yes, we are. Okay, guys, we will see you next week. Bye.
If you dare.